what is going on in Palestine and between the Iranian Israeli factions that really want to push for war.
Same thing that has been going on for decades, since 1948. Netanyahu wants to expand the war. He wants to drag the United States deeper into the Middle East conflict. So his solution is, let's bring the war to Lebanon and Iran. Let's start a wider regional war. Now, Iran and Lebanon, they're calibrated because they actually do not want to have a war with the United States. They don't want World War III. They also understand, they try not to play into Netanyahu's hand, but at the same time, they have to respond because this is an affront to their national dignity. They killed their guest in the national capital in Tehran. So Iran has to respond. I mean, for the people who are saying, oh, nothing ever happens, Iran is going to back out. Look, to plan a military operation, it's not like you just snap your finger and go. You have to scope out your target, figure out what their vulnerabilities are, and then you get you line up your ducks in a row. It takes time. It takes time for a careful, calibrated response. It will take time. Another development that was going on is United States is trying to pitch this last-ditch effort to have a ceasefire negotiation, and this is what Iran and Hezbollah also waiting on. I mean, they're willing to give another chance, even though for sure Israel and Netanyahu will try to scutter the peace talk. That's not what they're interested in. Their interest is wiping the war. Iran has been very patient. They have a lot of strategic patience. They're willing to give it another go to the ceasefire. But my prediction is this ceasefire is going to fail because Israel really do not want to have a ceasefire and have a peace negotiation. So we're going to have to see what happens after this weekend, after this, the failed peace, which I predict will be a failed peace negotiation. I don't know if you've seen on social media. I noticed lately it's really crazy on Twitter. Like, I think Israel are finally taking notice. There's a lot of solidarity between the Black community in U.S. and Palestine. And lately there has been so many bots, all these accounts that's created after October, November 2023 they're coming out saying, oh, I'm going to vote for Kamala no matter what because Palestine is not our struggle, right? Like, that's not our concern. We have to worry about our struggle at home. And it's so blatant. I mean, it's like all these three-letter agencies are working on overdrive, trying to drive this wedge between the Black community and the Palestinian struggle because they saw the synergies. They saw like the real strong Black Palestinian solidarity. They're scared of it, so they're doing whatever they can to sabotage it. And this is why Kamala and Tim Walz, if you look at their campaign, right now they just try to steer as far away as possible from any talks about Middle East or any talks about policy. If you look at their platform, it's policy free. It's like zero policy. It's like their campaign video it's basically Kamala Harris going to Tim Walz and ask him about Middle Western food, and they discuss how people in the Middle West don't eat spicy food. It's like all vibes. The entire campaign is running on vibes, and they're just trying to act themselves like, oh, like we're not crazy. Vote for me. But the scary thing is, like, a lot, according to the poll, if the poll number are to be trusted, then Kamala is showing us lead. I mean, the strategy looks like it might be working. This is why last time we met, I said, there's still 3-4 months to the election, and a lot of things can happen in 3 to 4 months because 3 months is like an eternity in the American election cycle. Anything can happen. Like Trump, he's not doing himself any favor, of course, and like every time he opened his mouth, he's not doing himself any favor. So we're seeing this really like a rerun. I mean, the whole now a lot of people, Democrats, are pretty confident Kamala Harris is going to be the next president. I mean, they're already acting like Hillary Clinton, back in 2016. start congratulating themselves. But I think the jury is still out, because 3 months is a long time. I'm really surprised how quick Trump campaign seemed to run out of steam right after his failed assassination, because if the election had been held on that day, right after the day he had a close call, he would have won. But today, now it looks more iffy. Like the Democrats, I have to give it to all the Democratic heavyweights like Pelosi, Obama. They knew what they were doing. They knew Biden was a liability. Anytime you put Biden in front of the camera, and everybody's like, no, we don't want 4 more years. And so they're like, okay, Biden has to go. And we put Kamala, who just laugh a lot and make all these vacuous statements. But guess what? It's hard for people to hate a dumb person, right? If she's just, I don't think she's dumb. I don't think she's dumb at all, because for anybody who rises to her position, you can't be dumb. And I think she's putting on an act, because I look at her public speech before she became vice president, including public speech she gave during the Democratic primary. She was very forceful speaker, and she's all like, I am law and order, I will impose law and order, and like she was talking all like that. And of course that didn't win any favors, because people knew she was a cop, right? I mean, like, we're not voting for a cop. And then so she totally changed her strategy after becoming VP. She just laughs a lot, talks about coconut, and like, you can't, it's harder for you to hate someone like a dumb airhead than you can hate a cop. And I think that she's playing us for suckers. I mean, I think she's putting up front, and it's working, actually, and it's working. So I mean, like right now, the Democratic Party, they're doing what they always do, is trying to browbeat their voters to vote for them. Like, why don't you? If you don't vote for us, it's gonna be Trump, and it's gonna be it's gonna be hell, and you have no choice but vote for us. And they're trying to distance themselves as far away from the Palestine issue. Of course, Kamala didn't do herself any favors when she opened her mouth, just like Trump. I mean, right now, the two candidates are all almost like running the campaign for each other. Like, every time they open their mouth, they're making the other candidate looks better. Like Kamala, when she was at her rally, and all these students protesting for Palestine, trying to hold her accountable, and she's like, shh, I'm speaking now, right? Like, so very condescending. She's like, if you want to vote for Trump, just say it, but I am speaking now. And all the clapping seals in the audience are like clapping, and then they actually put a t-shirt. Now they have a t-shirt with a Kamala poster and say, I am speaking. Stephen King just posted a picture of himself wearing the shirt with Kamala saying, I am speaking. They really think that's like a powerful girl boss, like an icon. They really think that's how they're going to win the voters. I mean, it's not a good look, but the people who are voting for Kamala, they're all they're of a demographic that's so out of touch with today's events and with today's young people. They really think they can do the same thing and win. So back to Palestine, I think if you look at what U.S. actually did, not what U.S. say. Confucius say, listen to what they say, but watch what they do. If you look at what U.S. is now deploying a lot of military hardware. They're moving another aircraft carrier battle group. Because they're worried. They are worried that Iranian and Hezbollah retaliation is coming, and they know Israel alone by itself won't be able to fend for itself. And this is what they did last time during the Iranian missile counterattack. That the U.S. and the NATO warships, they use their air defense to help Israel to shoot down missiles. Because the Iron Dome, we talk about, like, they always talk about the Iron Dome. Oh, it's invincible. But the problem with the Iron Dome is it's bullets shooting bullets. They're using missiles trying to shoot down incoming missiles. Well, guess what? Iran and Hezbollah, they have tons of missiles. The whole physics of Iron Dome is they're using missiles to shoot down missiles. You're using bullets to shoot down bullets. But guess what? What if you run out of bullets, right? I mean, what if they shower you with tons of missiles and totally overwhelm you? And this is what we saw in the past week. Hezbollah missile, they fire a barrage of Grad missiles toward Israel, and they all landed. And people are saying, oh, this is because Israel let that happen because they know those Grad missiles going to land in empty fields. It's not going to hurt people, so they're trying to use Iron Dome when it's necessary. But that's the whole point, So they know they're gonna run out of ammunition if they try to shoot down every incoming missiles. And Hezbollah and Iran, they have enough missiles to overwhelm the Iron Dome system. And this is why U.S. have to move their armada into the region to help Israel to make up for the deficiency in the Iron Dome. But even the U.S., their missiles going to be limited. I mean, and we're talking about asymmetric warfare here. The Iranian, Yemeni, and Hezbollah missiles, they don't cost much, Whereas those Patriot missiles, they cost a lot. A lot. I mean, even though U.S. can print money like crazy, but a billion here, soon you adds up to real money. I mean, like that. So, and besides, we all know the U.S. military-industrial complex is actually not up to the task to fight a real war. They can fight maybe have enough to go to places to fight goat herder in Afghanistan, but they don't have the military. They don't have the industrial capacity to replace all these air defense missiles that's going to be very quickly depleted if a real conflict break out with Iran and Hezbollah. So we're all waiting to see what happened now after this weekend. If something happened, then we should be back to talk about it. So, but now we're just waiting for how Iran will respond in a calculated and calibrated manner to put Israel on notice that their misdeeds will not go unpunished, but at the same time trying to avoid broaden the conflict into World War III.
Before Real Truth joins us, I want to say something to one of our audience members, and also want to jump on your piggyback off of what you said about the Iranian-Israeli thing. So F. Lou says, and it's funny because he was like, "Are you sure she's not that dumb, Carl?" And it was like, "I think you're giving her too much credit." I'm in the same mind as Carl, because you don't ascend to that position as a fool, and she was also a prosecutor, and so she knows how to speak publicly, and I think a lot of that stuff that you see is an act. I believe so. And but on that note, I want to say something concerning Iran. This was whispered into my ear, I believe, yesterday or day before yesterday, that Iran is about to strike. I don't know how true this is, but this is what a source out of Syria told me, that Iran is going to strike Israel. The resistance front is going to strike Israel in the coming, they said, anywhere from that time they told me to next Thursday. Now I don't know. I'm just telling you all. I didn't even have time to double or triple check, but I said this, that they said that they were going to hit no matter what the United States and the West is, and that's why the United States is bringing in all of the heavy weapons. And most of you don't know this, that this took place yesterday and day before yesterday, that the United States killed an Iranian IRGC lieutenant colonel. They bombed him in Syria, and this has gotten Iran, they're beside themselves now, because this just happened. This is out of the news. but it was whispered into my ear, and I did some checking on that, and that actually took place. I checked a few Iranian newspapers, and an IRGC colonel was killed in an airstrike by U.S. and coalition forces in Syria. So so I don't have to put that on Patreon. I just told you guys that. Now, on that issue with Iran, Syria, and what just transpired, how it seems like to me Netanyahu is so, he and the neocons and the Zionists are so detached from reality, because first of all they don't have the military capability and wherewithal to not just initiate but continue a war going against Iran and the axis of resistance. And Israel is bankrupt. The United States is bankrupt. England is bankrupt. NATO nations are bankrupt. So if war breaks out and Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz, the United States economy will collapse immediately. So what sense does that make to deploy that, to get in the middle of that at the behest of Israel, when you lose all of this on the other side?
The U.S. military-industrial complex and the U.S. foreign policy is designed a way they want to increase tensions. They want to continue to funnel money to corporations like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, by fighting small wars, small proxy wars. They can fight wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, proxy war in Ukraine. These kind of wars will funnel profits to the military-industrial complex by creating demand for weapons. But they're not designed to fight a big war. If they're gonna go really fight with Iran, that's a serious war. Iran is not Iraq, and they have the backing of Russia and China. So it's it has a potential to develop into World War III. So I think most people, even the top brass in Pentagon, they understand that. They're in it for the money. They're in it to line their own pocket from the grift, to continue to receive the kickback, and that will only works if the system still functions, if there's still a working economy in U.S. And that all that stuff is out of the window if a big war starts. So I think the positive side of that is, I think they will also try to avoid to have a big confrontation. So my guess is what they will do what they did last time for Israel. They will put all their military asset in the Middle East and will try to cover for Israel, trying to protect Israel from any kind of missile attack. They will bluff diplomatically. They will, like what they're doing right now. They will tell Iran, like, oh, any kind of retaliation, you will answer for any kind of retaliation. We're gonna use our military power to protect Israel, blah blah blah. But I think they are just trying to protect Israel, but they're trying to avoid to blow up into a big World War III situation, because they already have their hands full everywhere else. Like in Ukraine, they just had another suicidal push into Russia, right? I mean, like and we have the new news article now. They're totally blaming Nord Stream attack on Ukrainian now. So like there's so many things going on for United States that I don't think they want to be dragged in deeper into a Middle Eastern war, but they have to be there, because like we know Israel is a golden child, so so all the politicians have to do their utmost to protect the precious. But I think that's what's going on.
To protect the precious. I got what you said, Carl. This is my guy, Real Truth Talk, Juan from Real Truth Talk. How's it going, Juan? You could ask your question. You could ask your question.
Carl, I have a question. I have my questions written down. I'm not as good as Rasheed. He just comes on off of the top of his mind. I have mine written down. I had to research for mine. My first question for you, Carl, is: do you think the Israeli sanctions will deter or bother Iran's oil revenue, or stop their support to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis?
I mean, Iran has been sanctioned for so long and so many times. I don't think any additional sanction have teeth at this point. And also, United States now is trying to dangle out the prospect of renewed nuclear deal with Iran in order for them to back down from retaliating against Israel. So I think I don't think Iran is going to take it, of course, because U.S. has proven itself being unreliable. Last time Trump tore up the deal that Obama signed. Now it's possible there's going to be another Trump presidency. So how can you trust that? Especially right now, the last 3 months, the 3 months leading to U.S. election, I don't think any world leader would entertain a big deal with U.S. at this point. Because you never know who is going to be the next president and whether they're going to keep their promise or not. So I don't think any kind of threat of sanctions will have any effect on moderating Iranian action going forward, because they already sanctioned Iran. I mean, up to the gills. What more can they do?
One, you have another. And if you guys see me turning to the side, I have a new setup. I have like the laptop here, and I have the two dual screen computers up here. So I'm watching the screen and watching the news as you guys are talking. So, one, you could ask another question.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Carl, my next question is, I haven't heard anything. Do you know, or have you heard any updates on Wagner fighters?
I mean, the only thing I heard is probably what you guys heard about Wagner's in Africa, right? They were recently ambushed, fighting the Tuareg rebels in Mali, and I think this is where I have always held the view that Wagner needs to be reintegrated into the Central Russian Command. Before Wagner groups serve a useful purpose because they're not officially part of the Russian military, so they can be more flexible. For example, be deployed in Syria to fight along with the Syrian Arab army. But we have seen with the precaution coup, when I was in Moscow at that time, that you can't have these cowboys running the show all the time. You have to they need to be reintegrated. I still think the Wagner's future is to be reintegrated into the Russian military. That will give the people who are working Wagner right now official status, and they'll probably retain all the benefits. But it's because it's this I don't know. I mean, this is I'm not a Russian expert, right? This is just my take, my educated guess to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Before you ask another question, we have someone in the audience, None Your Business, which I love that screen name, None Your Business. It says, Carl, what's the real story going on in Thailand with the PM, the Prime Minister? Who is pulling the strings?
Well, I mean, Thai military has a big say in who gets into the government. I mean, they had an NED candidate winning the Thai election back in the days, but he never became the prime minister. They had some backroom dealings. They came up with an alternative candidate for the prime minister. But in the end, I don't think it matters much. All these candidates are like coming from billionaire families, and but for the perspective of Thai military, they want stability. And I think I don't think we are going to return to like kind of the big street confrontation between like the red shirts and the yellow shirts several years ago. I don't think the Thai military will allow that because and so that's the thing. The Thailand will continue to have elections. U.S. will continue to have a lot of influence in Thailand through NGOs, funneling money, buying off the rich people over there. But at the same time, the Thai military has a lot of because they have the guns, right? Because like Mao said, the political power could come out of the barrel of a gun, and the Thai military has a gun. So I don't think much will change in Thailand. This is just my take.
I want to say something which is crazy. I have to bring this up here because this is absolutely insane. We get censored if we question the legitimacy of the U.S. elections. We get censored if we even bring up that there are opposite views of who won an election, quote unquote. And yet nobody gets censored when Biden says this right here. Biden calls for new elections in Venezuela. This is the headline. RT is reporting. It says Biden calls for new elections in Venezuela. Why did he call for new elections when it was a dispute here in the United States, when people were saying that Trump was the rightful winner? But he's involved in the Venezuelan elections, which I might add had monitors from around the world outside of the Western world who said that these were free and fair elections and that there was little to no problems as was reported in the Western press, and that Maduro was actually the winner, and he won by a little bit more than the margin that was announced by the West. So why is it that Biden can seem fit to question the legitimacy of Maduro and the integrity of the Venezuelan elections, but you cannot say anything about the U.S. elections? And before you answer that call, remember that former President Jimmy Carter, before he was sick, he went down to to Venezuela with the Carter Center, and when they had the last elections, he verified that Venezuela had the freest and most fairest elections in the world. So how can it come out of the mouth of this man who got into office on a disputed thing? YouTube, don't censor us. I'm just bringing up this, but yet he has the gall and the nerve to question the legitimacy of Maduro in Venezuela's election.
Well, Rasheed, it's always do whatever I say, don't do what I do. And besides, Venezuela has a lot of oil. Venezuela is floating on the world's largest oil reserve. So of course U.S. is going to involve. Whenever there's oil, like U.S. military is like the world's best geologists. They love that shit. and so I mean they're gonna interfere. And all these. The funny thing is, all these conservatives, they complain about the border, right? About the border, but guess who created all this migrant crisis? Because they're trying to choke off the Venezuelan economy, and they're creating hard times, harsh conditions. That this is what created conditions for a lot of Venezuelans leaving their country and trying to get inside the United States via Mexico. I mean, this is entirely self-inflicted problem. I mean, it's the same problem in Europe. They bomb all these countries in the Middle East, and when the refugees come, they're like, wow, refugees. I mean, like they should demand their leaders to stop that by bombing people abroad, so those people don't have to come over. I mean, this is a kind of entire disconnect between the elite and the average people. What happened in Europe, just like what happened to the United States, is this elite class making all these decisions, practicing military adventurism and imperialism abroad, that's wreaking havoc everywhere else. And when the refugees come, it's not the elite that live among the refugees, right? I mean, and like so the average people will bear the burden, will bear the cost, and whereas the elite continue to carry out these very destructive policies abroad. So I mean, this is the much sensible policy. Of course, would be lift sanctions on Venezuela, have a productive trading relationship with Venezuela, so a lot of Venezuelans can have a prosperous life inside the country of Venezuela, and it's a win-win for for both. But that's, we know the people in Washington don't believe that kind of thing. No, win-win. They think that's crazy talk. So here we are.
Now, Juan, go ahead. I know you have some more questions. Go ahead. I told you this is a free for all. Ask your questions.
Carl, are you in the States or are you in China?
He's in Bali.
I escaped from LA, man. I'm in Bali. I'm in Bali. I have been living here since the pandemic, and I love it. I live in a tropical paradise.
Nice.
I mean, the States is nice, but so I took my wife and my kid to see my parents last year because my parents haven't met my wife or their grandchild. We stopped in LA for a day, and we because to recover from the jet lag, we decided to stay in a hotel near LAX. We're just walking around to get some fast food. We walked to the Carl's Jr. Yeah, I take my son to Carl's Jr. And then we walked across like 3 or 4 homeless people just lying on the street, just as a short walk from our hotel to a Carl's Jr. And my wife was completely shocked. It's like, I thought U.S. is a rich country. what the hell is going on? I'm like, welcome to LA, man. Welcome to LA. This is LA.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question. I seen and I posted one of your videos, not the whole video, but I did like 30-40 minutes of it. It was a really good video. You were talking with Scott Ritter, and you guys were discussing the Sierra Madre, and I just wanted to know, can you give us an update? And then after I seen the video and I posted it on my channel, and then I just happened to open up. Well, because I know they probably listened, and then they just happened to open up, and it was an article about the Sierra Madres. Can you give us like an update or what's going on? Because I know that there's a lot of naval ships that are going to the Pacific right now.
So for people who don't know, Sierra Madre used to be a United States Navy warship. It's like I think it was an amphibious landing ship during World War II. It was a transport ship, and then it was transferred to Vietnam, to South Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And of course, after the liberation of Saigon, American got kicked out. So the United States took that ship, the old ship that was previously given to South Vietnam Navy, and then turn around, give it to the Philippines. And then it was renamed Sierra Madre. So in 1999, the Filipino government decided to make a claim on the second Thomas Shaw. And the way they did it is they decide, okay, they're like, we have this really old, decrepit World War II warship. We're just gonna run it aground on the second Thomas Shaw and then put our stake down, literally. So that's what they did. At that time in 1999, China protested because China has claim over the same Shaw. And at that time, the president of the Philippines said, "Oh, it was an accident. We just have a mechanical failure. Don't worry, we'll tow it away." Of course, they never towed it away. 25 years later, that ship is still there. And the Philippines actually posted a half dozen Filipino Marines on the ship. Now, in 2014, this is even before Duterte came to power, China and Philippine government had a gentleman agreement where China said, okay, for humanitarian reasons, we'll allow you to bring food and supplies to your Marine stationed on that, stranded, grounded ship. But you have to promise not to bring any construction material to the second Thomas Shaw, because China just like, okay, it's an old rust bucket. We'll just let it, fall apart by the weather, by the elements. So we don't want you to reinforce the structure. But you can, if you decide to station troops there, fine. Just they need to eat. Okay, we understand. So that was a gentleman agreement held until Bongbong Marcos came to power. After Bongbong Marcos made a trip to Washington, he did a 180-degree turn on the Philippine policy toward China. He opened up additional military bases for United States. Now, U.S. have access to 9 Filipino bases. And they even station missiles over there. So, the whole conflict around Second Thomas Shaw then become a very convenient excuse for U.S. to kind of pivot its military hardware to the Philippines. So this is when the Filipino government violated the 2014 agreement by bringing construction materials to Sierra Madre, trying to reinforce the ship, make it a permanent structure. This is when China objected and sent Chinese Coast Guard ship to using water cannon on these supply ships that are trying to bring building material to Sierra Madre. And this is what all the pictures and videos that we saw. They have like Filipino journalists, CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. They have all these journalists on board to film the Chinese water cannon from every angle, right? So they can plaster it back to justify U.S. military presence in the East Asia. And then very recently, China and Philippines actually sat down trying to resolve this issue. They agreed to restore the 2014 gentleman agreement where Chinese Coast Guard will back off to allow the Philippine Marine to resupply their 6 personnel on Sierra Madre, but Philippines promised not to bring any construction material. So this happened in late July, and the Philippines were successfully run a supply mission to Sierra Madre without any interference from Chinese Coast Guard. So it looks like everything was going good. And then the day after, the 28th of July, U.S. met with Bongbong Marcos, promised additional $500 million in military aid. And then days after, Bongbong Marcos says, China made a misinterpretation of our agreement. And so now we're back. We're back to the confrontation again. I think it's just another case of U.S. made an offer that Bongbong Marcos couldn't refuse. I mean, like they saw the moment they saw the tension were dying down between the Philippines and China, they're like, okay, that's not acceptable. That goes against our narratives. So they went in and made another offer to Bongbong Marcos. Now Bongbong Marcos changed his tune again. Now it's confrontation time again in South China Sea, and now they have all these NATO ships coming to South China Sea. You have Norway. Norway. I didn't even know Norway has a navy. Norway is saying they're hitched back on the British UK aircraft carrier group to come to South China Sea. I mean, we're talking about a UK aircraft carrier they can barely operate, that keep on having fire problems ever since they've been constructed, spend most of this time in the docks. But these Europeans, they're just vassals to the United States. They can't say no to the US. So to prove their loyalty to their master in Washington, they have to make a big show, like a show. The demonstration of their fealty to Washington is send whatever meager military asset they have and send them to do a military parade around South China Sea. I mean, it's very foolish, unnecessarily provocative, and stupid. But that's the policy. That's an official U.S. policy right now. Stupid, unnecessarily provocative, and totally counterproductive.
And since we're on that issue, I'm going to play a little short clip that's pertaining to what's going on in the Asia Pacific. The West changes things like the South China Sea. They change it to the West Philippine Sea or the Indo-Pacific when we're talking about the Asia Pacific region. These are little sleight of hand moves to try to frustrate China and to antagonize the Chinese. But I pick up on all of that stuff. But I want you to listen. This is about 2 minutes, and this is Scott Ritter. So check this out.
Our countries are taking significant steps to strengthen defense security cooperation. We're modernizing command and control structures. I'm also pleased to announce that for the first time, Japan and the United States and Australia will create a network system of air, missile, and defense architecture. We're also looking forward to standing up a trilateral military exercise with Japan and the United Kingdom. And our AUKUS defense partnership with Australia and the United Kingdom is exploring how Japan can join our work in the second pillar, which focuses on advanced capabilities, including AI, autonomous systems.
The AUKUS military bloc, comprised of Australia, the UK, and the US, has also said it wants Japan to take part in its framework. That country's prime minister has, however, walked back potential direct involvement with the alliance, saying no decision has been made yet. We asked former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer Scott Ritter for his take on the prospects of more confrontation in Asia.
The United States is resentful of the fact that neither Russia nor China want to kneel before hegemonic America, that neither Russia nor China recognize the United States as the supreme authority on the global stage anymore. This is something the United States resents, and it's something that the United States is pushing back against. I think we are witnessing a race between the economic condition and the military condition. If the United States loses the economic race, I think the United States will have no choice but to cede the military race, meaning that we'll have to find a way to correct our position economically before we talk about going to war. We can't go to war based upon a fundamentally weak economic position. If the United States is able to stabilize its economic position vis-a-vis China, then we will press the military issues, believing that we have a military advantage over China. And this is a misconception, a misperception, and a mistake, and it will lead to direct conflict with China. So I think the world needs to start betting on continued Chinese economic growth and Chinese economic dominance, because only through that path will a war with America be avoided.
So, with that said, I want your take on what Scott said, Carl, but I want it done in a way where you're analyzing also Russia, because I continue to advocate. I don't advocate war, but I'm saying that the passiveness of Russia has brought some of the escalation on with the United States, because if you do not confront a bully, the bully will think that you're scared of them and there's no repercussions, so they will continue to escalate until you take the knee, till you bend the knee. So what have you to say on that? And after you say that, I'm going to play a clip and then let him come in and chime in.
Yeah, of course, Scott Ritter is absolutely right. People may know I have my differences with Scott, and because he's an arms control guy, he believes in non-nuclear proliferation. I believe everybody should have nukes. That will make the world a peace place. But what he said is absolutely correct. The U.S. has this U.S. elite. I keep on saying, this big difference between U.S. elite and U.S. people. The U.S. elite have this hegemonic bug on their brain. You have just to drive the point home between the difference between U.S. elite and U.S. people. Before Biden was forced to step down, he was bragging about AUKUS. He's like, I did all this. I made sure, stabilize our position in the Western Pacific. I created AUKUS. But I'm listening to this. Which average Americans care about AUKUS? For most people, most Americans can't tell the difference between Taiwan and Thailand. Who cares about AUKUS? How is this like going to help you win, Biden? But that's all they care about is hegemony, to maintain whatever it takes to maintain the U.S. hegemonic position everywhere across the world. And to what you said earlier, it's interesting that Scott's thesis is completely different from John Mearsheimer, because Scott is saying, for there's peace, we need to see continued strong economic growth from China, versus Mearsheimer says, no, China cannot rise peacefully because as China gets stronger economically, that will make their military more powerful. That will make United States even more want to contain China even more, and so that will lead to a confrontation, right? But But you know, I respect John Mearsheimer too. You know, I think he's a very honest U.S. imperialist. He
Yes.
wants the U.S. to do smarter imperialism. You know, he doesn't want
Yes.
he doesn't want U.S. to be involved in Ukraine and or Middle East because he feels that's peripheral to the to maintain U.S. empire. U.S. need to focus on East Asia, where you know the core of a lot of the economic activity taking place in the 21st century. I respect his opinion. A lot of Chinese respect Mearsheimer because they feel like Mearsheimer is more honest than people like Biden or Blinken who talk about human rights, talk about freedom. Mearsheimer just say, "Oh, you know, we want power. You know, we want to be number one."
Yeah.
So I appreciate him share those honest opinions. But I think United States will have to come to realization at some point. All their effort trying to cripple the Chinese progress, Chinese economic growth, is failing, and it's not doing U.S. any favors. You know, Intel just had a big layoff, and their stock just tanked, and because you know, despite all the money the U.S. government promised to give them for under the CHIP Act. And you know, guess what happens when you are forced to cut off your largest customer, China, by U.S. policy? Of course, Intel is not doing themselves any favor by coming out with crap products for the last how many years, and on the top of that, they cut themselves from the world's largest market. So all these effort of U.S. fighting a losing battle trying to contain China, it's going to come back and bite U.S. in the behind. And I think now there are more and more people are waking up to to that fact. But I don't know how long that realization will translate into more action, like to more sane foreign policy. I think that's just too much to expect from the U.S. government at this point. But yeah, Scott is absolutely right, correct. But about Russia, what you said about Russia, I mean, Russia was at a very different place after the collapse of the Soviet Union. You know, one of the reasons United States think they collapsed Soviet Union. No. U.S. didn't do anything because U.S. did not know of that because even the CIA were surprised that Soviet Union collapsed. You know, Soviet Union collapsed because the Soviet elite don't want Soviet Union anymore. They wanted to join. They want to join the other 1% in the West to enjoy all the luxury goods of the West without any restrictions. This is, you know, when Gorbachev saw the Pizza Hut commercial, you know, he's like, okay, that's it. Soviet Union is over. We're going to have Pizza Hut. But it was disaster. It was disaster for Russia. And you know, but the Russian elite still had this illusion, you know, the post-Soviet collapse, Russian elite have this illusion that they can, by giving up Soviet Union, by giving up like ideological struggle with the West, that there will be somehow welcome into the family, into the family of democracy and, you know, like whatever, and be welcome into the West. But they were sadly mistaken because the first thing U.S. did was to continue expansion of NATO to their borders. You know, they made a verbal promise to Gorbachev that they will not expand the NATO. You know, they will not push NATO east. Right? It's not gonna. You know, if you allow Germany to reunify, we're not gonna go include NATO, push NATO to Poland. But now they're in Ukraine, right? And it's you give them an inch, they take like a mile, and people probably don't remember, youngins don't remember, back in 2000 when Putin first came to power, he actually made an offer to Clinton saying, hey, let us join NATO. You know, we want to be part of you, please. You know, let's be friends. And Bill Clinton went to say, okay, this sounds good. Let me check with my people. By people, you know, it's like the people who really run the U.S., the deep state. And then Bill Clinton came back. So sorry, my people say we can't do that. and so that was that. That was that. Russia was rebuffed at every term when they tried to join the West. You know, they're on this holy grail quest to join the West ever since the collapse of Soviet, even before the collapse of the Soviet Union. You know, the whole reason for the collapse is their elite want to join the West, but the West keep on slapping them in the face, and so now that's where we're here now. We're fighting a terrible losing battle in Ukraine at the cost of you know, like the favorite line of the Western media, at what cost? At the cost of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian lives. And the more recent push into Russia, that was completely suicidal. They gathered their best division, their best brigade from Ukraine. One of the last, you know, intact brigade that still had fighting capability. They sent on this publicity stunt by sending them to Kursk because, you know, I guess at NATO they just have to, they get too excited over the prospect of seeing German tanks in Kursk again, right? I mean, like they just have to have that optics, and this is so suicidal. All these Ukrainians they send on this offensive will end up just like the Ukrainians they spent on their last famous spring offensive in 2023. They will be wiped out and for nothing, and for only like a brief time of publicity stunt. They're willing to sacrifice all these men. Well, I will not say equipment. You know, equipment that's provided for by NATO anyway. So yeah, so they're and end up accomplishing nothing. And what it will do is all these provocations. It's just going to strengthen the resolve of Russian people to see they're going to finish this with unconditional surrender of Ukraine in the end. I mean, now Putin even said that. No more. There's no need for negotiation anymore. We're going to prosecute this war, this special military operation until its successful end. And I think that means unconditional surrender of Ukraine. And there's nothing NATO or the West can do about it.
I will let you get your next question in. Warren, go ahead.
Hey, Carl, just to go back, I mean, we're talking about, you were speaking about something else, but I just want to go back real quick. So do you believe that the Sierra Madres could lead to a nuclear war?
No, I don't think so. I mean, right now we're talking about water cannon fights. We're talking about Chinese Coast Guard ships spraying water on a bunch of supply ships. I mean, like, so I mean, this is for United States, even for US, they're not interested in the fight of war. They are interested to place their military hardware in Philippines. That is the goal of this crisis, you know, to sneak US military deployment back because they got kicked out after the end of Cold War. US used to have maintained the largest naval base and air base in the Philippines. That was Clark Air Base and Subic Bay Naval Base. And after the Cold War, the Filipino government's like, oh, you know what? You come here, you bring all this crime. Your American GIs committed all this crime on a local population, leading to rampant prostitution. You know what? This is if we're to burden this cost, you have to pay more money. And America's like, no, we're not going to pay. You know, and it's just like Trump, you know, like, no, you are going to pay. We're not going to pay. And then the Philippines like, okay, if you're not going to pay, you're out of here. We're not going to renew the lease. So U.S. got kicked out after early 90s. And now U.S. is trying to come back in. And their way to come back in is to encourage Bongbong Marcos to create this tension in the South China Sea. So now U.S. have a very, very legitimate cover to pivot back to the Philippines. They already accomplished their goal by gaining the access to the Filipino bases and by placing U.S. missiles in the Philippines. You know, they're putting all these pieces together, of course, to contain China. And another thing to AUKUS, former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keaton even spoke on this.
saw that.
The AUKUS is not a great deal for Australia. So what AUKUS is saying is United States will deliver a nuclear submarine to Australia in 40 years, you know, and in the meantime, Australia have to build a nuclear submarine capable base in Western Australia, in Perth, and it will allow access by the U.S. Navy and UK Navy. So what essentially says is U.S. just gain additional military base in Australia at the expense of the Australian and make Australian pay for it. and you know, maybe at the end of the 40 years, Australia will get a nuclear submarine. You know, that's so far out. I mean, it makes no difference to Australia's defense in these 40 years. All they get is more U.S. military on their soil, and you know, these. Australia, they don't have sovereignty on these U.S. military base. They already have a base called Pine Gap. Australian citizens cannot enter that area because that area is under jurisdiction of the U.S. military. And so now they're just going to create all this more enclaves or exclaves of the U.S. military presence in Australia. This is all to shore up the U.S. positions to contain China. So I mean, U.S. right now is building up its military position. It's all posturing. It's all about military posture. They're not. I don't think they're interested to fight a big battle with China. For the fact that they won't win. I mean, like how they can't even win in Iraq and Afghanistan. How do they expect they're going to win against China when most, you know, they talk about blocking Strait of Malacca, right? Cutting off energy supply and food supply to China. But how the hell are you going to do that? All the U.S. Navy, they're just going to sit there and check each ship to make sure they're either go to China or somewhere else. I mean, that's unrealistic. What they will do, if they do a blockade, they will blockade off the traffic of entire East Asia. We're talking about Japan, Korea, China, Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand. I mean, everybody will be affected. And it will also cut off the world trade because China is a world's factory. And so if you want to have a war with the rest of the world, you go blockade the Strait of Malacca. Not to mention, you are also blockading yourself because all the stuff in U.S. comes from China anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're sanctioning yourself. So I mean, a lot of these crazy talks with war with China, I just don't think that's realistic. I mean, they do war games after war games on scenarios of a fight with China, and 90% of the time, the United States end up losing. So I just don't see that happening. But their game has always been to create the tension so that can justify to continue to pump money into the military-industrial complex, and that has always been the game. And then they can continue to force Taiwan to pay for very expensive, outdated weapon platform from the United States. I mean, it's all about grift. I mean, this is my take. I think it's all about grift. They're not seeking. All these talk about nuclear war, you know, United States, Nixon had this thing called madman theory in the Cold War. The idea is if United States act like this completely unhinged madman threatening nuclear annihilation, then Soviet Union will back down, right? That, you know what, you know, like, two people can play this game, you know. Mm-hmm. That's why this is why when I was talking to Scott Ritter, I quoted Mao, because Mao was basically, you know what, you want to be madman? Okay, hold my beer, you know. let's go have a nuclear war. And so this is what Mao meant when he says nuclear weapon is a paper tiger. You know, I know in the Cold War we did have a couple instances we were pretty close. It was like Cuban Missile Crisis and there was a couple other instances, but
the Korean War.
But at that time it was Cold War was a quite different struggle, because at that time, you know, it's ideology, you know, like the whole ideology of the communism was to they're going to export revolution across the world. It's two ideologically opposed camps. But right now, China and Russia, they're not trying to export their political models. They're just saying, hey, let's respect sovereignty, national borders. And because but the United States like no, we don't believe in sovereignty, we believe in empire. You are either bowing to us as our vassals or you are our enemy. So this is insane. This is insane. I do think at some point, I don't see it happening anytime soon, but I do see some point sanity has to return to the U.S. foreign policy.
I want to say a few things. First of all, I was kicked off the internet. My signal strength is excellent connection. So evidently we've been teeing a few people off talking because I have excellent connection and I have a backup internet and I was knocked off. So that's one thing. Two things. I want to disagree with you for 1 second, but it's in light. You said 80% of the war game in China won. When I watched the review, it was 100% of the war games that China won. It's just that in the winning of the last few war games, the United States was able to not lose so many warships and so many sailors and Marines by the use of non-existent future weapon systems that they employed in the so-called war games that they don't have any technology. So I understand what you're saying, but I had to say that to the people. Now, I want to play something for you because there was just war games going on yesterday with the United States, the French, and a few other of the NATO nations, and they're saying that how they're going to expand to the Asia Pacific, even though the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization is supposed to be North Atlantic organization. So I want to play this right here. It's about a minute. So check this out.
NATO is a product of the Cold War, and it has been virtually resurrected as a result of the conflict in Ukraine, and we're seeing it, this organization to continue expansion these days. And the latest summit right now that is being held in Washington, D.C. is now even proclaiming that China is becoming the threat. So what is this? This is going really too far. NATO seems to be interested only in finding new enemies, picking fights everywhere, and this is not right. And being a North Atlantic, based organization or a military bloc, it is now even advancing to Asia. And this is really absurd. And I think the Chinese government is right to have made the point very clear that we are not a country that is interested in picking fights with people. We're a peace-loving people. So for NATO to pick China as the scapegoat for its own military expansion, that is totally groundless.
See, and I want to make a couple of points here. First of all, I want to address something that's on the screen right now about shipping has stopped everywhere. I was looking at a lot of shipping companies. They're laying off people and they're closing down. At the same time, I heard that China enacted a policy to now limit the export of certain vital material to the United States. And that is going to hit hard in every industry, military and commercial industries, as they do that. And I want to know, why does the United States think that China, thousands of years old civilization, will just bow to U.S. dictates when they are no longer in the position to dominate? China outstrips America in purchasing power parity, in manufacturing. She's the largest trade partner to practically everybody on the globe. She is the financial hub to practically everybody on the globe. And common sense tells me that if my place is in decline and yours is in ascension, why won't I attach myself to you to stay relevant and to stay in a position of success instead of constantly antagonizing and provoking? Why don't any of the Western leaders look at it like that? Because if you antagonize the very nations that are rising, on your collapse, when you hit the bottom, it'll be that much harder because there's no thing to cushion you at the fall.
Well, Rasheed, you are making a huge assumption. Your assumption is that Western leaders are endowed with intelligence. I mean, that's just not true. I mean, they only care about line. They're very smart about lining up their own pocket. I mean, no doubt about that. But everything else, you think they know about history or geography or anything other than grift? I don't see any evidence of that. Right now, they only care about is winning the votes, please their political donor class, and get more money, and everything revolve around that. And what the cooperating with China, win-win, what's that? How is that going to benefit them? How is it going to get money from Lockheed Martin or Boeing or whoever they don't like? What's her name, Miriam? Whatever her those political donors name is, and so I don't think they care about do they care about long-term viability of the United States? I don't think so. I mean, what is it to them? They are just in it to make the money now, to make themselves and their family rich. That's what United States is about. Actually, it's all about making money. This is why people from all over the world come to United States, to make money. So it is what it is. This is what you get.
Go ahead, Juan. Hey, come on. You got to get in with us, man. You got to flow with us. And come on, Juan. You get to ask questions too.
I'm learning. This is like learning knowledge, and this is like classes in session.
Go ahead and ask your question, Juan.
I have a question. Do you believe that Iran is scared and won't retaliate because significant time has passed?
Well, I don't think Iran is scared. They have strategic patience. Iran don't want to start a war. They don't want to have a war with the United States. That's not in their interest. They're more interested about developing their own country, but they will have to respond because this is an affront to their national dignity and their pride. They will have to answer for. But military, like I mentioned earlier, military operation of any kind, it takes time to plan, to execute. You have to pick your target, to figure out where your opponent's vulnerability lays, and how to best exploit their disadvantage and maximize your own advantage. So that all takes time. I mean, it's just logistics. The whole logistics takes time to plan and pull together. So I don't think, Sun Tzu has said, you don't fight a war at your enemy's choosing. You choose the battle at your own timing and your own place. And that's what Iran is doing, I think. They will fight when they're ready, when they think it's the best time to strike. Right now, Israelis themselves are panicking. If you read the news, they have all these psychological problems in Israel as they're waiting for the strike from Hezbollah and Iran. They're cracking. And so it's, it's like Iran hasn't even done anything. I mean, the longer Iran wait, it's just more mental stress for the Israelis. So, there's no hurry. I think Iran will definitely take action. This is the belief of many Iranians themselves. So we'll just have to wait and see. Just be patient. It's only a week, guys. It's only a week. you need that at least that amount of time to plan out a military operation. So,
I want to, since you guys brought this back up on the situation with Iran and Israel, I don't think most people understand the gravity of what is going on. You have a bankrupt and a declining superpower that is being drawn into a conflict that some of the neocons have wanted for decades. You have a bankrupt power, a Middle Eastern power that is declining militarily in Israel. You have it flaunting international law and committing war crimes and crimes against humanity in front of the entire world, right? And at the same time, we're looking at the all of the embers starting to smolder into a burning fire for war. Now, if this takes place, most people, they don't even understand that Israel does not have the financial capability or capacity to sustain a large war. This would bankrupt the system that is already political and ethnically and morally already bankrupt. So that could bring about the end of Israel. And at the same time, it would also weaken the so-called global hegemon that much further. So with weapons sent to Ukraine, and you see how Russia is outpacing, outgunning, outmanning the entirety of Ukraine and NATO, including the United States. And then America, after leaving the a war in the region of the Middle East, North African region, goes and limps into the Asia Pacific to fight China. That's untenable and unwinnable, because if you think that you're having problems now to outproduce or to try to catch up with weapon production with Russia, China dwarfs Russia in manufacturing capacity. So what I'm saying is these little nuances in the Middle East is drawing the empire to a close. Don't you think so? It is bankrupting and collapsing the Western Empire. What do you say about that, Carl?
Well, I mean, we're not talking about if, we're talking about when. I mean, right now it's just a matter of how long, how dragged out this whole process of imperial decline is. It's not a question whether it will happen. It's already happening. Israel really shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, after October 7th and their response, it's they almost act like they don't care about the world opinion, right? Because they're tweeting out their war crimes in public. I just don't see how they can, it will be sustainable in the long run. A lot of the Israelis, they have other passports, they have places, they have other options, and once that, even after October 7th, a lot of the Israeli settlers have moved away from the area, from all the settlements around Gaza. Guess how many of them are returning, right? But once the Hezbollah and Iranian missiles going to start ringing in, more people are going to leave, and many of them will never come back. And you cannot maintain a settler colony without settlers. This is why I think it's a lose-lose situation for Israel in the long run. Their economy is already on the verge of collapse. I mean, the only reason they haven't completely collapsed is because U.S. keep on providing blood transfusion by giving them unlimited credit, and U.S. keep on providing them with weapons to sustain this war. Israel by itself would not be able to operate in Gaza for this long. They would have ran out of ammunition in like a month. Then it comes back to the United States itself. Now, U.S. has a little bit more strategic depth than Israel. U.S. is still a continental-sized economy. It's a world's third most populous country. I mean, it's still, even though now it's the shine has come up, but still for many people, U.S. still is an aspirational country. So there's still immigrants coming over to U.S. to make money. U.S., if its leaders play its card right, they can people in U.S. can have a nice, prosperous lives. But they don't care about the people. They treat everyone but one as peons. That's why I think people don't understand. For the U.S. elite, the average American people are no different from like the people in Afghanistan or Iran or Palestine. You're just all like expendable peons for them to extract profit. What I'm trying to say is, I think the U.S. imperial decline will be more dragged out. You will be painful for a lot of people, but Israel, I just don't see a future in Israel. There's still possibility for U.S. to redeem itself. I just don't see that a possibility for Israel at all, because right now they're on a path of no return.
I was just wondering, what's your thoughts on Scott Ritter's home being raided by the FBI?
That's a political hit. I mean, that's a political hit. They are trying to shut down dissent. You know, as the U.S. goes through its own imperial decline, the government control will be more and more. The grip will be tighter and tighter. You know, we have witnesses ever since Iraq War. You know, first they go after Assange. They're already going after Kim Da-kang in New Zealand. It's same thing. They're what they're trying to do to Scott Ritter, because Scott Ritter has been a vocal critic of the U.S. government policies, and they are trying to go after him under FARA, which is a so-called the Foreign Agent Registration Act, which is this very broad, very vague legislation. They can just accuse anyone of being a foreign agent. You know, they could say, "Oh, Scott, he may maybe taken money from some organization which is somehow affiliated with the Russian state, then he's a foreign agent." You know, like this. So this right now, they're raiding their home. They're going through his computers and electronic communication. They're trying to find any incriminating evidence that can be used against him. That's what they're doing, and it's also harassment, right? It's even if they don't prosecute, even if they don't go forward with their case, this is intimidation. They're putting Scott Ritter on notice, like, this is the power we have over you. This is what we can do to you. We can make your life a living hell. You know, we can make you very, very uncomfortable if we choose to. And the fact this is very well publicized is also putting other dissenters, potential dissidents, on notice. This is the power of United States government can do to squash any of you who dare to challenge our authority. I mean, that it's very obvious to me. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They're clamping on dissent, and they're doing it. They're doing, you know, before it's more settled. They censor your Twitter posts, they censor your Facebook post, but now it's just more overt when they, you know, because they can.
Do you believe that's because we're entering the end phase of American dominance? And you know, when people have dominated so long and they've had all of the levels of power at their hand, they start lashing out when the legitimacy of their rule is questioned and is under stress.
I mean, totally, man. I mean, like, this is why I think, unfortunately, you know, as U.S. continue to decline and the countries like China and Russia continue to grow, all this rhetoric inside United States will go in more insane, you know, to be anti-China or anti-Russia, because our elite are scrambling. You know, they're scrambling to justify their own existence. They're scrambling to justify their own policy, their failed policies. So they will double down, and they will you know, funnel more money into propaganda. I mean, it's you already seen that. You know, they're already doing that, targeting the anti. They're already targeting like the pro-Palestinian voice in United States. You know, like the recent NPR report on how Washington Post is investigating Taylor Lorenz. You know, I don't know who Taylor Lorenz is. You know, he's some kind of reporter, but it's over her private Instagram story where she posted the pictures referring Biden as a criminal. This is the country that prides itself on being free. You know, America, land of the free. And this is a country that prides itself on people having freedom of speech. They're investigating a private Instagram story. Like, she's not even in her like public soapbox trying to say this. She posted story that was private Instagram stories, and just because he has a picture says called Biden a criminal, somehow they're opening investigation. I mean, this is why I laugh when people say, "Oh, people in U.S. have freedom of speech." You kidding me? Like, you do not have freedom of speech at your place of employment. If you work for somebody, if you work for a company, you cannot say shit while in your workplace. We all know that. You know, your ass will be on the line. You'll get fired. And people keep on saying we have freedom of speech. I mean, that's bullshit. And this is how they're going to go after people, threaten people. Is in U.S. because like everything is tied with our jobs. You know, our healthcare, everything is tied with our jobs. So they go after people's livelihood. It's always they threaten people with their career, with their job, and it works. Unfortunately, I mean, very sad to say it works. This is why I'm in Bali, man. It's great. Like, I can say all this shit I say right now because I don't work for the man. You know, I'm a shit poster. I live off my shit posts, and this is why I can say the shit I do. Because I'm not in a work environment or corporate environment. I have to watch what I say. That I'm scared of somebody find my 10-year-old social media post and say, gotcha. It's like, no, who cares?
You know, Carl, that you're right, because I had a friend about 3 months ago. He was talking against the woke people, and they fired him. Yep.
Yeah, so, there's no freedom of speech in America, man. Like anybody who work as an adult in the corporate world knew there's no freedom of speech at workplace. You cannot talk bad mouth your employer. You'll get your ass fired. You know, it's just fact.
So Carl, now pivoting back, let's pivot over to the Ukrainian crisis. We see the United States saying that now, as a matter of fact, I was looking at something on RT right on the screen, right? So if you see me looking behind, I have a screen right here, a screen right here, and a screen right here. So I was looking at something, and it says that it was talking about the United States Secretary of State and how it says the national security spokesperson says Ukraine can use U.S. weapons for cross-border strikes. Now listen, I already know some of your thoughts on this, but I want the world to see. What do you think America's response would be if Russia was telling some Mexicans that wanted to retake Texas and they were like, listen, this is our land, and then Russia goes and arms and say, hey, you can use these Iskanders for cross-border strikes. What do you think that America's response would be, and why is it so hypocritical?
I mean, this is very dangerous. They're now like encouraged. I mean, look, let's face it. A lot of these U.S. weapon systems that they give to Ukrainians, they're operated by Americans. Mm-hmm. Ukrainians are not operating the Patriot missiles. The Ukrainians are not operating the HIMARS, and all these and all the satellite intelligence. That's done by U.S. U.S. is doing so. U.S. is now in more and more moving into the front row of fighting Russia, and this is very, very dangerous. I mean, like they're just pissing off the Russians even more. That's all they're doing. They're not actually materially degrading the Russian war capabilities. I mean, Russia's war industry is humming. The Russia have mobilized more troops. All these pinprick attacks, it's like poking the bear. That's literally what they're doing. They're poking the bear. They're not actually damaging the bear. They're just making the bear angry. It's just stupid, man. That's just a stupid policy.
Go ahead, Juan.
Carl, what do you believe? What and who do you believe will set off World War III?
Oh my God! Well, I hope there will not be a World War III, because, like Einstein said, I don't know what weapons will be used to fight World War III, but for sure for World War IV, it will be stones and sticks. Because that's very real. That's very real, because this is a fact that this is the reason why China and India, they have this agreement on their border dispute that they will not use live ammunition. They will not use guns. If you see the fights along the Indian-China border, it's all rocks and sticks, because they're like, you know what? We're skipping World War III, guys. We're going straight to World War IV. We're gonna fight it with rock and sticks. So this will not escalate. And it's actually a very smart policy, because they know they don't want to end up with nuclear exchange. I mean, it's not more saner policy than whatever United States is doing. Because like China and India is basically telling each other, like, okay, we don't want a bigger war, but we need to let this let off the steam a little bit from time to time. We let our boys fight with rock and sticks. I think that should be the proper conduct for all civilized nations. You settle their differences, but going back to the tradition, right? Going back to the tradition. But is there a lot of the problem is, what worrying is, there's a lot of cycles in the U.S. National security establishment. They're right now deploying tactical nukes into the Pacific right now, to the Western Pacific right now, because their idea is, okay, well, all these war games that show that China is winning. You know what? That's conventional warfare. Guess what? We still have tactical nukes, right? I mean, because if we just use tactical nukes against China, they won't really retaliate, right? Because it's only a tactical nuke. It's not a city buster, right? So, I mean, maybe this is crazy. There's no once you go nuke, there's no going back.
Right.
China is not gonna care. You only use a tactical nuke rather than a strategic nuke. A nuke is a nuke. Once they see that mushroom, all these mushroom cloud is coming to you as well. So I mean, like, I just hope the saner people prevail. There's a lot of crazies out there, man, especially in the Pentagon and a lot of these think tanks. So I really hope. I don't think China and Russia are interested in fighting nuclear war. There's a lot of talk about, this is it's really getting crazy. Russia might use nuclear weapon. Like, why? Russia's winning conventionally. They can crush Ukraine. In conventional warfare, no problem. Same with China. China don't really have much to worry about in a conventional warfare. They don't need to resort to nukes. So the only people who might use nukes, United States. And so let's hope for the saner heads to prevail in the U.S. military.
And since we're talking on that, let me play a short clip, a 3-minute clip for you about what Russia has to say about what's going on in Ukraine and the nuclear possibility. Here we are.
Alarming news. So coming from a Russian state media outlet, which in turn is citing Russian law enforcement officials, we're hearing that Ukrainian armed forces are planning to detonate a dirty nuclear bomb. And the potential targets are storage sites at power plants. Well, to get a bit more on this, let's cross live now to RT correspondent Igor Zhdanov. I mean, Igor, I know that this is something that's literally emerged, well, really within the last sort of half an hour, 45 minutes. Very disturbing. What do we know at this stage?
Well, basically, we know that various reports in various media outlets have emerged, citing anonymous sources within the Russian security bloc, purporting that indeed Kiev could be planning a dirty bomb attack against nuclear waste facilities of the Zaporozhye and the Kursk nuclear power plants. Indeed, some very concerning developments and some very concerning and indeed alarming news. Apparently, according to these reports, the Russian security bloc even knows the direct location of the special warheads that Kiev has prepared for this attack. And they do provide this location in the Dnipropetrovsk region of Ukraine. This is not the first time that Russia is warning and is ringing the alarm about the possibility of such nuclear provocation. Here's what the head of Russia's radiological, chemical, and biological protection forces had previously said.
How realistic is the scenario of Ukraine's military political leadership creating a dirty bomb?
Well, we won't reveal any secrets, but in fact it's not that difficult. I believe they already have one. There have been instances of toxic substances being used that could only have been synthesized in the US, because no other industry is equipped to produce them. All our concerns have been formally submitted to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. So far, there has been no reaction.
Now, again, very, very concerning, and these reports come as the coordinator for the pro-Russian underground inside Ukraine has stepped forward with basically with a statement of his own. He says that plenty of Western journalists have arrived to the Sumy region and the Kherson region that is currently under the control of the Kiev forces. He claims that could be to cover this provocation. Again, these are his words, and this is something that the head of the pro-Russian, or rather the coordinator for the pro-Russian underground in Ukraine, is saying. Also, a claim is being made that this operation is being planned out by NATO instructors, mainly from the Great Britain. Again, these reports, we cannot them independently verify. But again, the Russian Foreign Ministry has already responded to that and has called on the Kiev authorities and on the Western world to take this information very seriously.
Absolutely, we're going to be covering it here. In fact, we've got some guests now to delve into it. That was our RT correspondent, Igor Zhanov, bring us all the very latest on that development. Thank you, Igor.
So before you comment on this and give us your insight on what you think is going on, because this could lead to a outright nuclear war. But because you heard the Russian general say, we know that it is being orchestrated by the U.S. and NATO. So that's a casus belli for war. But I want, before you talk about that, Carl, there's an article on RT that came out today. And the article is titled, U.S. Biggest Nuclear Threat. And it's from China. And it says, Washington seeks to intimidate the world with its nuclear powers, the defense ministry in Beijing has said. America poses the greatest danger to the world when it comes to the risk of a potential nuclear conflict, Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman Zhang Zhejiang told journalists on Friday. Beijing has accused Washington of making irresponsible decisions in attempts to maintain its hegemony, including through intimidating the international community with its nuclear arsenal. You take the floor and elaborate.
I think what's happening is Ukraine they're desperate. They are going, rather than salt the earth, they're gonna, we're just gonna make turn the field into nuclear. If we can't have it, because both those regions are controlled by Russia, if we can't have it, guess what? Nobody can. We're gonna poison the earth, make it uninhabitable. So you win nothing. This is what they're going for, and it's very irresponsible, very, very, very dangerous. I mean, you could have just negotiate for peace. I mean, you almost agreed to the negotiation back in March 2022 until Boris Johnson stopped you. I mean, who is stopping you right now? And of course, NATO is stopping them. But the rather goes through. I mean, this just shows their level of desperation. I mean, it's very concerning news, of course, but I think it shows their level of desperation. It will not lead to I don't think it will lead to a nuclear war. It will just make, if it does take place, it will make those regions, desolate for a long time. And the Chinese spokesperson is obviously correct. I mean, right now the biggest danger come from U.S. U.S. have one of the largest nuclear stockpiles after Russia, and it's actually deploying tactical nuclear weapons to the front lines. They're deploying to the Pacific. It's all very open, by the way. All these information is people can Google for it, and this is why I think what China will do in response is I think China will increase its own nuclear arsenal. I mean, China already have the delivery capabilities, but before China maintain like a small nuclear arsenal between 300 to 400, I expect they'll probably increase that number to maybe 1,000 to match, enough credible nuclear deterrent, because right now U.S. still counting on having taking out the opponents in a first strike. China has a publicly stated they have a no first strike policy. China will not be the first country to use nuclear weapons, and so to have a second strike capability, they have to increase their stockpile. So I think, unfortunately, what that's going to what end up happening, all these U.S. provocation is going to lead to a larger Chinese nuclear arsenal, because China now is at the point where their economy is large enough they can support it. They can, in the 1980s, Deng Xiaoping actually cut the Chinese defense budget so they can focus on our economy. But now we're at a place where Chinese economy have grown sufficiently large enough they can actually comfortably support a larger nuclear stockpile, and I think that's what's going to happen.
I think, and before this will be one of my final questions, I think one of the main reasons that the United States is acting unhinged, and one of the main reasons why her political class are pushing for war and provocations is because of the debt burden that America's under. They know that they cannot repay that debt. They know that they're indebted to almost every nation in the world, especially and specifically China and Japan. And I believe desperation is setting in, and when desperation sets in, desperate people do desperate things. And I believe because they've been the hegemonic power, and they have dominated in every sphere globally, and they know that the bloodline to Western hegemony is the economics, which is the dollar, and they're losing their position. And I would believe that that is one of the main things that is driving these people insane. And I want to play something for you, and after this, I want to get your opinion on it. Then I'll let Juan get his last question in, because I know you have diaper duty soon. So check this out. Here we are.
Billions of dollars being sent to Ukraine is one factor contributing to the current state of the U.S. economy. American billionaire and investor Leon Cooperman has stated a meltdown appears imminent because of the fast-growing national debt stateside.
We're heading towards a fiscal disaster in our country. There's nobody focusing on the debt creation in the economy. In 2017, the national debt of the country, I think, was 17 trillion. 5 years, wait a minute, not 5 years. Yeah, it's about 5 years later. We're knocking on the door, 7 years later. So I'm a little slow this morning. So currently the debt is about 34, 35 trillion. It's a growth rate in debt far in excess of growth rate of the economy. I think we're pulling demand forward, and neither political party is focused on this.
He brings up, if anyone ever watched that full interview, he brings up a lot more about just this kind of audacious spending spree that the US has been on for a while. I mean, if we just look at the numbers that the US spends on foreign conflicts, for example, right? Since 2022, the US has given $55.4 billion to Ukraine, and Israel $150 billion since the 90s. This, bear in mind, at a point when we heard yesterday that the US's own federal disaster budget has essentially run out of money. It's gone. It's disappeared into thin air, or it's all been spent. It's incredibly worrying. I mean, we're seeing not just Cooperman, but we're also seeing large US corporations, companies and businessmen divesting themselves of their own economy. I mean, if we look at Berkshire Hathaway, which a lot of people know, owned by the infamous Warren Buffett, if we look at the numbers there, they've moved so much into cash in this last quarter. They've been selling off half of their entire Apple stock, which is probably one of the US's highest performing stocks over the last 20 years, half of their stock, which is absolutely huge. And their balance sheet right now, $189 billion they're holding in cash. And that means that's dead money, essentially, Union. That's money that they're just holding that's not being reinvested into the economy in things like government bonds, in things like US stocks, equities, shares, all stuff like that. They've literally just pulled that money out and they're holding basically a war chest. And I think that really tells us exactly where the economy is and probably signs of what's to come. The IMF, let's say, is no real friend to Russia, China, or any of the so-called multipolar world, are forecasting that the global economy, they're saying that, national debt of the global economy, the US being the largest economy in the world, pretty much, unfortunately, every economy in the world is going to follow suit. There'll be a domino effect. 140% GDP per capita to debt ratio, which is absolutely massive. In fact, I think we've got a clip, Union, we can see of what the IMF are actually warning. Okay.
High deficits and debt create a growing risk for the U.S. and the global economy, potentially feeding into higher fiscal financing costs. The ongoing expansion of trade restrictions and insufficient progress in addressing the vulnerabilities both pose important downside risks.
And again, we've seen other countries heed that advice. Say China, a lot of people don't know this, but China holds a huge amount of US dollar bonds. That's basically US debt that China has lent the US government, in spite of what they say and all their, their propaganda about China. They're really in the hole with China. They owe China a lot of money in US bonds. They've sold $50 billion of their US Treasury bonds this summer, which is probably more than they've sold in a very, very long time. And then we've got the other issue of, all of the sanctions the US has put on Russia, put on, putting it now looking like it under a Trump administration, getting even worse on China. And that's just damaging the economy. More importantly, Union, we talk about it a lot in this program, it's damaging the greenback, the US dollar, which is one of the ways in which the US has managed to stay as the world's largest economy. A lot of countries are moving away from the US dollar and choosing alternative currencies to trade in. So I think it's just pretty bad news if you live in the West.
So with that said, and we're watching the downward spiral of the U.S. economy. China selling off debt. Other nations are selling off debt. The United States, at any given time, according to the latest report, has more than 1/3 of the world's population and countries under sanctions at any given time. How do you think that's sustainable, especially promoting war everywhere?
Well, I think I saw a comment that they said the U.S. thinks the government thinks that money grows on trees. Well, actually, they don't even need to use trees anymore. It's digital. You just type in zero, a bunch of zeros. It's done. And another thing is like U.S. government is financed by debt. People say, oh, that's how they use our tax dollars. No. They don't need your tax dollars. You don't understand. U.S. government haven't been running on your tax dollar for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. U.S. is run on debt. And so why do they still keep our collecting our taxes? Well, guess what? They want to control you. That's how they control you. They don't need it because they just print the money, but they still want to maintain their level of control by collecting taxes from you. So yeah, welcome to America, people. This is of course it's not sustainable. It's right now. This is why they're really nervous about kind of the BRICS currency, and they're really worried about any kind of alternative currency to U.S. as the world's reserve currency. The fact, when the Kissinger went to Saudi Arabia to negotiate the petrodollar, that was the time U.S. basically took the delinked U.S. dollar from gold. Right? Because after the 70s, U.S. dollar, the value of U.S. dollar is based on your trust on the U.S. government. but they also understand, okay, maybe that's not enough. So they have to link with the dollar with the oil. So if Saudis, want the oil price in dollars, so for people to buy oil, essential commodities, they need to have U.S. dollars. So that's what powered the U.S. dollar status as the world reserve currency, and because everybody now use it. Now it was very convenient. Everybody use it, so nobody had problem with it until U.S. discovered. You know what? This is a weapon. We can weaponize the U.S. dollar hegemony to go after people we don't like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, and like China. And then pretty soon people realize that, wait a minute. I put my money and my wealth in dollars because I thought it was easy. It's accepted everywhere. You're going to tell me by putting my fortune in U.S. dollar, you can take it away from me anytime? Of course, people are going to seek alternatives. And they are again, this is another big instances of U.S. self-inflicted problem on the U.S. empire. It doesn't have to be. If they just left the dollar transaction alone, we would not be in the situation we're in today. And that this is the finance is one of the last pillar of U.S. empire. That's still holding up, because people say, show the videos of U.S. Armada and the U.S. Navy. This is what's backing the U.S. dollar. Well, what's backing that? What's backing all this aircraft carrier? Guess what? This is the U.S. dollar. So it's still the U.S. dollar. If the U.S. dollar goes, all that goes. So we again, I this is just a matter of time. We're not talking about if. We're talking about when. I still think the process will be longer and more dragged out than people would like. We're setting for a long process of decline, because I don't think they will have. They first have to come up with an alternative first, because China is still very hesitant about yuan being the reserve currency, because as to make your currency a world reserve currency, that means you're willing to accept our large deficit or large trade deficit. And I don't think China is ready for that, because that will lead to deindustrialization. Like what happened to the United States, hollowing out your manufacturing sector. So I think this is why they're trying to come up with like a basket of currencies, weighted by commodities or something. But alternative will be found. And now U.S. government policy has really created a need for an alternative to U.S. dollars. So it's just a matter of time when that will be created. And that will be bad news for people in the United States, because the high living standards people enjoy in U.S. right now, a large part of it is due to the status of U.S. dollar as a world reserve currency. That's when all the Saudi prince are they're piling all their oil profit back into reinvesting it back into the U.S. China used to invest all their surpluses back into the U.S. treasuries. Now China saw what happened to Russia. It's like, no, thank you. We're going to try to. We'd rather invest those on Belt and Road Initiative projects. At least we build something, build infrastructure that will lead to further growth than having just sit there as a U.S. Treasury bill. So this is not sustainable. It's going to be bad, but I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I'm thinking it's going to drag out for like a decade, maybe even 2 decades. This is what my thinking.
I thought it was, but I thought I got to address something earlier, what you said, and then I'll let Juan ask his last question of the show. It has been dragging on for decades already. A lot of people look to the 1971 decoupling the dollar from the gold standard. But I say that the United States had defaulted long before that. If you look back to the 40s, going into the 50s, and then up as we approach the 60s, the U.S. no longer had silver in the nickels. Okay, and then that means that they were robbing the coins of its content. Then when you move from 60 to 65, they robbed the dimes and the quarters so they were moving off of that standard. I believe this was in process since 1914. Then when you look at from 65 to 70, they robbed the half dollars and the dollars from of the silver, and only then they were printing up a lot of money, and it was Charles de Gaulle, the French leader and former admiral or commander, who was watching it, and he was an ally to the United States, and these guys are spending more than they're producing. And Richard Nixon says, well, the U.S. dollar is as good as gold, and de Gaulle says, well, then give us gold then. And they demanded the gold, and other nations demanded their gold, and the United States put a hold on transferring gold because they didn't have that gold. A lot of people don't know that. But this has been in the making since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, and we can see the demonetization or the collapsing backing of the currency in the coins up to the paper money now. So I think,
well, Rasheed, I still remember just a few years ago, the copper content in the pennies were worth more than pennies. So yes, people were melting down pennies to get copper. I mean, with the way we're going, everything's just gonna be plastic. It'll be like whatever the cheapest thing you can do. I mean, like, this is why they're moving to digital currency. And you don't even need a median. You just type a zero.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I think that process has already run its course. We're living in the contortion. As you cut the head off the snake, the snake's body continues to move. The snake is dead, even though the body does not recognize that it is dead. It continues to move for hours, upwards of 2 to 3 hours afterwards. And then rigor mortis sets in. I think we're in the stage of the first bit of rigor mortis setting into the global dominance of the American and Western empire. That's the way I see it, because I look back at all of that stuff happening and I compare it to what we see nowadays. And I think the head has been cut off the snake because the dollar is no longer King Kong, and now we're having the contortion of the body.
I think we're gonna have a couple of decades of convulsions, Rasheed.
Go ahead. One last question of the night.
Okay, Carl, this is my last question, and I just want to say thank you for your time and your knowledge. This was like a session for me, a learning lesson for me. I learned a lot. I want to thank you for that, and I thank Rasheed for having me. My last question is, what are your thoughts? Do you believe that the U.S. and NATO assisted in the Kursk region attack, and why?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I didn't catch the last part.
Do you believe that the U.S. and NATO assisted in the Kursk region attack, and why?
I mean, come on. Of course, the U.S. NATO right now, they're heavily embedded in the Ukrainian military operation nowadays. They're the ones who provide all the satellite intelligence. They're the ones who picking out the target. They operate all the big ticket systems like HIMARS, Patriot. That's all American operated. This is. I just think this is a desperate. This is a publicity stunt. What they're going for is an effect they can brag about. Oh, we're invading Russia. Oh, let's look, German tanks in Kursk again. After 80 years. But this is just the same like the so-called spring-summer offensive from last year. Like when everybody talk about. I still remember there was a big Twitter space and everybody was talking about march on to Moscow. I'm like, you guys are crazy. None of that's gonna happen. And even Prigozhin's couldn't make it to Moscow. This is just I don't know. It's like you have a lot of investment. You're already invested. It's like you're investing in a relationship. You have an investment. You just want to. You don't want to. You're still in denial. So you're just throwing more money, trying to keep it going. I think that's what's going on.
My friend and my buddy, Juan, asked you a pertinent question, so I want to follow it up with a clip. I have all these things.
Russian forces continue to repel Ukraine's attempts to move deeper into the Kursk region. A strong counterattack against the cross-border incursion has been seen over the past number of days. Russian artillery units have targeted Ukrainian armoured mobile groups that are trying to push forward. Meanwhile, Moscow's defense ministry reports a total of 2,600 Ukrainian troops have been killed so far in the 10-day event. That's as Russia's presidential aide states Kiev wouldn't have resorted to such a move without overseas approval.
The US claims of their non-involvement in Kiev's crimes in the Kursk region do not correspond to reality. Washington regularly says one thing and does another. Without their participation and direct support, Kiev would not have ventured into Russian territory. This criminal action is caused by a premonition of the imminent collapse of the neo-Nazi Kiev regime.
Fighting is very intense, but as time goes by, more details emerge about the apparent coordination between the Kiev regime and its NATO allies, mainly the United States. And this coordination was something that the Pentagon initially denied.
We were not made aware of this operation. That doesn't mean that it's an intelligence failure.
Does that indicate that there's a lack of trust between Kiev and Washington?
There's absolutely trust there. As we said, we didn't know about this one operation. That doesn't mean that we're not engaged on other things.
We're certainly not engaged in any aspect of the planning or preparation of this operation.
Coming out of Washington was that the United States were not in the know of this truly large-scale and arguably one of the most important military operations of Ukraine, something that many experts see as an all-in move. But the advisor to the Ukrainian president's office head revealed that indeed it was not the case.
There are certain things that have to be done with the element of surprise, and that have to happen on a local level. But there were discussions between partner forces, just not on the public level.
In somewhat a show of formidable display of power, the Russian Ministry of Defense shared footage of spotting, tracking down and destroying a HIMARS artillery system. By the fact that the fighting here is so intense and by the fact that the fighting is very intense elsewhere, Ukraine is not running out, but it is depleting its resources when it comes to NATO-supplied vehicles. So Washington has announced that a new batch, that a new tranche of military support will soon be on its way. But again, according to Washington itself, right now, Ukraine does not have the capabilities of carrying out a large-scale operation.
The Ukrainian armed forces continue to suffer heavy attrition rates and lack sufficient capabilities and munitions, particularly artillery, air defense, and long-range strike capabilities, to overcome Russia's air and ground advantages. Ukraine probably remains capable of continuing defensive operations, but not conducting large-scale counteroffensives for at least the next 6 months, according to the Defense Intelligence Agency.
So here's the thing about American military support. Even though they do have every intention to help out Kiev, they themselves admit that, for instance, when it comes to artillery shells, some of those types that Ukraine needs and that Ukraine uses are simply no longer produced or no longer produced in the numbers that this conflict requires. And this is just one bottleneck when it comes to American support and to what Kiev can really get and can hope for. And it really shows, because by opening this front, by going forward with this border incursion, Kiev is stretching the already colossal front line. And it's not like they don't need reserves elsewhere. And mayors and Kiev's government, Kiev's appointed governors of regions that are close to the fighting inside Ukraine, they are ringing the alarm.
We see that today the enemy has almost approached our city, Krasnoarmeysk. It is just a little more than 10 kilometers from the vicinity of the city. So please, don't be afraid, evacuate, especially families with children, especially seniors. The situation is only getting worse. It won't get better.
Many commanders on the ground, they have questions as to why these much-needed reserves are now being spent here in the Kursk region, and garrison is being depleted because the losses are very significant and truly massive. The fighting continues, and we will stand by here in Kursk to bring you all the latest.
Well, on that very latter point, my colleague Nikki Urin got the take of former CIA analyst Laurie Johnson. Now, for him, the Pentagon report suggesting that Ukraine will be able to launch an offensive in the near future is not based in reality.
The United States tries to keep itself behind the scenes, but I guarantee you that this invasion of Russia with German tanks and British tanks was planned and coordinated with NATO, with the United States in the lead. And for the United States now to pretend, like that they don't know nothing about any invasion is just ludicrous.
Talk us through the logic here. I mean, what could be behind this Ukrainian strategy to open a new front against Russia while at the same time other Kiev forces are lacking reinforcement and ammunition?
You're an optimist. You're using the term logic as if the Western authorities are thinking about this logically, strategically, rationally. No, across the board, it's all emotion in the West, completely divorced from reality. I am a little shocked by that Defense Intelligence Agency conclusion that is suggesting or intimating that, well, for the next 6 months, Ukraine can't mount a counteroffensive, but by God, give them another 6 months and they'll be ready to go. No, Ukraine's a dead country walking.
So, before we get off the air in less than a minute or whatever, what do you have to say